Good morning, welcome to Social Media Magic. I'm your host, Professor Bradford Knight from Westfield State University. I'm a PhD in Strategic Management and Chair of the Department of Economics and Management at Westfield State. I started a bicycle company many years ago, and I traveled to Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union and taught classes in international business and entrepreneurship, advising the Russians about how to start new business, which is a very novel idea for them. I'm joined in the presentation by Elizabeth Long-Lingo.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth, and I am an embedded practitioner in entrepreneurship, creative leadership, and social innovation at Mount Holyoke. And I'm a UMass Eisenberg undergraduate alum, and have wound my path where I ended up getting my PhD in organizational design and negotiation and innovation. And so prior to coming to Mount Holyoke, I had this amazing opportunity to kind of design and launch programs around creativity and innovation for the public good at Vanderbilt University down in Nashville, Tennessee. So I have about 20 years of working in finance and customer loyalty and trust, and then in the leadership of this core challenge, right, of entrepreneurs, of working all the way from idea stage through to implementation. So, and I'll be speaking on crowdsourcing today.
Good morning, guys. How's everyone? Good? I'm going to talk to you in a little bit about a firm that I run that's aimed at inspiring, igniting, and informing entrepreneurs. Folks who are at your stage of learning and knowledge, because I felt like I really wished I had that when I was your age and when I was back just starting out. I have 25 years of communications marketing experience in the social change segment. So I've worked with businesses that always wanted to do good in the world, those cliche green businesses. A lot of brands in the aisles of Whole Foods, a lot of folks in the apparel, electronics, beauty, all kinds of segments, really using social media as a social change tool, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit.
Hi everybody. So I am also a former UMasser. I studied journalism there, and as I got to the end of my undergraduate career, I said to myself, boy, I really don't want to be a journalist. But what I got out of that education was great. That was fantastic and serves me every day. Was just a love of storytelling and a lot of education on how to tell stories. It'll be a theme that it comes up again and again in this presentation, because that's really the power of marketing, can be best captured through storytelling. So before I got my current position, I was actually working on the consulting side. So I worked with the financial services industry, worked with a lot of folks from Mass Mutual, helping them establish their brand and their identity and how they wanted to be known and present themselves to the world around them, to their customers and their prospects. So it was a great opportunity to, again, hone that storytelling, work with a bunch of different people on different angles. You might think, oh, well, they all must have the same story, they're financial advisors. But what's really fun and exciting about that was digging down in and finding the reasons why. So that led to my current position today, which I will talk to you a little bit more about later.
So I'm going to talk about how to make social media strategy. We're in a world of social media: Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Yelp, and many others. It's as though your business is a ship. You can picture a four-masted schooner sailing in a turbulent sea of social media that's changing all the time. What I'm developing here is actually a cybernetics model. Cybernetics is the study of communication and control in the animal and the machine. And it comes from a Greek word meaning steersmanship, steering the ship. So this is the ship of your business. You are converting inputs into outputs for your customer. Information about this system is the basis for your perceptions of the world. So this is the world, this is the world, this is your perception of the world, it's reality, and that's in contrast to your dream of what the world could be like for your customer, for your families, for the future. Differences between the way the world is without your product or service and the way it would be if your business were successful, those differences are problems to be solved partly by your social media strategy. You choose among different social media, different content that you could put in the social media, different schedule of revising the content, different patterns of engagement with your customers. Those are decisions you'll make. You'll convert those into detailed action plans to implement in your business, changing your relationship with your customers through social media, changing the relationship between the inputs and the outputs, and improving your products and services for the benefit of the customer to change the world from the way it was to the way it will be. We can skip the next two slides because that's what I just said. And then we have, from my colleague at Westfield State, Professor Phil Hart, 10 tips for social media marketing. Nothing's free. If you remember the diagram, there are inputs to your business, and those are costly, including managing your social media. So you have to design a strategy that doesn't cost too much. Next, the big four types of social media. Your major decision is among those, as I said. But as we'll see in the succeeding presentations, there are, of course, many other social media, and social media are evolving continually. Third tip, content is king. Followers come for the content, and a theme we'll see in the presentations to come are that part of that content is the story that you tell. You want your customers and the people who join you in the social media to be able to see your image of the world. The story is about your image of the world and the world that could be. So the importance of content. The 80-20 rule says that 20% of your content is likely to be original, and 80% is going to be shared or imported from other sources. Tip 5, keep the update times down. Don't take too long in updating your content. Next slide. Don't update it too frequently, because then when your customers and when the people you join with in the social media, when they come back to check in, they'll feel like they've missed a lot and they'll turn off. Slow and steady wins. It takes time to build a social media presence. It's the product life cycle. It's the learning curve that you will have seen in marketing classes. It's true for any product or service. There's a learning curve for your story and your social media. Dialogue, dialogue, dialogue. Maintain an interaction. Again, it's about the pace of engagement. That's something that you need to tune the same way you do driving a car in traffic. In fact, the social media is the environment that we have now. We used to have an environment of oceans with ships, of railroad transportation. We had an environment of trucks and cars. Now we live in a world of social media. Put out the fires, address negativity. You've seen people can get vicious in social media for the same reason that people develop road rage. They may be powerless in their lives. Suddenly they have power, anonymity, and they can express themselves. And it's unfortunate, but you need to deal with that quickly so that it doesn't dominate. And finally, search engine optimization. Improve your presence in search results. And now we'll see some vivid stories and examples of social media. And first, Elizabeth.
Hello. So, how many people have heard of crowdfunding? Great. So I'm so pleased to hear that. So I was a finance undergrad, and I have worked, with entrepreneurs and business people 20 years. And for so long, we had the options in terms of funding. We had the money in our own pocket, right? The money from our parents. If we were lucky, we could get a loan from a bank. We could get some money from the VCs. In recent times, we've suddenly had this incredible unleashing of the ability to garner financing and funding for our ideas through crowdsourcing. Anyone here of Kickstarter? Right, so this did not exist in recent times. And suddenly, we have this amazing opportunity for entrepreneurs to tell their stories, to reach a much larger number of people in a compelling way, to think about how to get rapid feedback from a much larger array of potential consumers, investors, to get a proof of concept much earlier on. So I want to focus on crowdsourcing too, because I think it also, as I teach entrepreneurship, the idea of developing a crowdsourcing campaign tests you on so many different levels and stretches your capacity. So you need to be able to pitch your idea, but also using visual media, right? So we need to be able to use video, we need to use images, we need to be able to tell our narrative. We need to be able to think of what exactly do these people want out of it? Do they want invest equity? Do they want a reward? Do they want this sense of, I'm part of this larger tribe that's supporting this project? And also, as an entrepreneur, it helps us to think about how do we engage our audiences, our funders, our stakeholders in a much deeper way, perhaps inviting them into the creative process itself. So as we see, Kickstarter, primarily for creative projects, but if you go on Kickstarter, you can see hundreds of thousands of creative projects and ventures that are out there looking for funding. Everything from a film, documentary, to new restaurants, to new bookstores, funding of novels, funding of craft exchanges. If you want inspiration for ideas, this is a great place to go. If you want money for your projects, again, this is an incredible source for you. Indiegogo. This is interesting. As I was doing the research for this presentation, crowdfunder. There's now this bubbling up of all these brokers who are trying to actually be the mediators for you to get your ideas out and tap you into the realm of crowdsourcing. Kiva. Anyone heard of Kiva? Yeah, so Kiva is incredibly powerful. It's a way of doing micro-lending. In all of crowdsourcing, people can invest anything from $1 to $500,000. So it's an amazing way to reach a whole array of people at different levels. What's intriguing to me about crowdsourcing as well is the range of projects that you can invest in and be a part of. And I really mean be a part of. As an investor in these projects, you just feel, I've invested in a chocolate company in Seattle. I live in Massachusetts. It's pretty amazing. So I've funded a circuit bender ball where they brought together people around technology and electronics and a new way to launch those projects. I funded something called the Kite Patch. This is an amazing little patch that they're developing that repels mosquitoes. So they're trying to develop this patch, especially in Africa, to deal with malaria. And I want to just point out, the original goal for this Kite Patch campaign was $75,000. They raised $557,000 through crowdsourcing. So this is a serious, there's billions of dollars now being exchanged to these crowdsourcing sites. You could also fund, this is an interesting, this pool tile by tile project. This is a group of 3 entrepreneurs. They want to create a floatable swimming pool in the East River of Manhattan. And they're engaging people in their story and they're saying, look, imagine what's possible. Imagine swimming in the East River and you could have a tile in that swimming pool. And you can get in on these early stages of that entrepreneurial dream. Has anyone heard of the tile? It's this little tiny disc, kind of like a guitar pick. My husband's a songwriter. They were trying to get supplemental funding to money that they raised in Silicon Valley. So they had gotten $200,000 from venture capital in Silicon Valley. They wanted another $20,000. They raised $2.6 million versus another crowdsourcing platform called Self-Starter. So as we're thinking about actually taking our ideas and making it happen, I just want everyone to be aware of this. So it's social media, this is where it's all coming together, right? We're marketing our messages, we're developing our pitch, we're engaging and thinking about how to really create connection with funders, with stakeholders, with bloggers, with our consumers. So for sake of time, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of different models that are out there. there's three of them now, which is, I just want to point out. So the first is probably the ones that you've heard of, Kickstarter and Indiegogo. And the idea is that someone's out there, they create their pitch with these particular, in Kickstarter, for example, you think about different reward structures and different ways and levels at which people can engage your project. Might be at $1, might be at 10, might be at 50, might be at 300, and you think about different reward levels based on what people are investing. Or it might just be a donation model, so there's no reward. And that's been kind of the dominant model, 71%. The second is a lending model. And again, that's the Kiva model, right? This micro-lending, crowdsourced lending, where you have your idea, you crowdsource, people can fund at the $5 level. But the key is that you're actually repaying a loan. So people are crowdsourcing a loan, and then you're actually paying it back. On the Kiva website, if you look, 99% repayment rate. The third is equity, and this is something new for the US. So in 2012, there's a whole history here that I won't get into. Go look it up. Equity, raising equity through crowdsourcing is now possible, just since 2012. And through the Obama administration, through the Title II, and then also through the job acts that's supporting entrepreneurs, this became possible. So now you'll see, if you start going out there, you can see, remember on that one of those first slides about that crowdfunder, there are now platforms, venture capitalists, equity brokers who are trying to help navigate that platform, be the broker between all these entrepreneurs and the crowdfunders. Okay, so crowdfunding, secrets of success. So I had this amazing opportunity at Vanderbilt and I am so passionate about helping students kind of design and launch creative enterprise. So I thought, wow, I need to have all of my students actually do a Kickstarter with me. So for one of my classes, we worked with an African-American novelist named Alice Randall, and she was really interested in taking a novel approach to tackling African-American diabetes. So instead of just having doctors say, you need to get better, she said, I'm gonna write a book. And her book was very successful, but we wanted to raise funds to get those books out to African-American churches and beauty salons throughout the diabetes and stroke belt, to start fostering conversation about behavioral change and cultural norms. So anyway, and this was because we were at Vanderbilt in a program around creativity and innovation for the public good. So one of the first things we had to do was think about what should our target goal be? And this is one of the things you need to be thoughtful about. So what is the actual amount that you can ask for? And different models will afford you different kind of latitude in terms of how high you set that bar. In Kickstarter, what's really interesting is that you are only funded if you're fully funded. So you don't want to go too high, or else you're not going to get any money at all unless you hit your target. So we went for $3,000, and we ended up kind of getting above that, $3,500. Okay, so secrets to success. Develop your visual storytelling chops. This is going to come out again and again. Social media, and the power is the storytelling by using visuals. And thinking about the aesthetics, and how do you get that story across and create that connection through video when you're not face-to-face with the person. The second is getting your goals, as I said, kind of that target amount, right? What's a reasonable pitch? What's a reasonable ask to the crowd? And getting your rewards right as well. And this is kind of just basic 101, right, for all entrepreneurs. You need to think about how are you going to incentivize those people to actually invest in your effort. This was key for our success. Take an integrated approach, online, offline, right? So we had we had Facebook campaigns, we had Twitter campaigns, we had Vanderbilt University was blogging about us, fantastic. But actually what we found to be most successful was we actually had events. And we actually complemented our viral marketing with different events and different kind of face-to-face interactions that made this really successful. Identify your tipping point. So in crowdsourcing, you typically have a finite time to run your campaigns. It's excellent because it forces you to really think about that strategic marketing, that integrated approach, and how you're going to run that for that 30-day or 60-day session. So in Kickstarter, they recommend 30 days. So you have 30 days to reach your goal. And what they have found is that there's a kind of a tipping point. So by kind of day 10 or day 20, or day 15, sorry, 10 or 15, you have to be at least halfway funded, or else it's not going to be successful. So you kind of have to get that ramping up early. How will you do that? How will you get people committed so that you can kind of show and kind of the proof of concept to the crowd? One of the things about Kickstarter and these crowdsourcing platforms is you need to be clear about your risks. So there's a whole section about what are the risks? How could this not work? So these platforms work because there's kind of this trust, right, in the platform, that you're going to clearly articulate what your risks are, the potential that you might fail, what the problems might be to your investors. And finally, fulfill your promises. This follow-through piece is so critical. So if you say that you're going to do kind of behind-the-scenes video sharing your creative process, the entrepreneurial process, the day that you're shipping, right? You're finally shipping your goods, and you had promised that you're going to have a video of that. You better do that, because that's how you stay engaged and keep your people committed. And that follow-through piece is really what distinguishes the successful entrepreneur. So I'm now going to pass it over.
So hello again, guys. As I said, I work for a company called Prosperity Candle. So Prosperity Candle is a startup social enterprise working with former women refugees who are resettling here in the Pioneer Valley and rebuilding their lives. Every candle that we sell is hand-poured by a woman artisan. Every candle comes with her portrait, signature, and story, which enables the consumer to connect with the creator. And every candle we sell helps provide living wage work for a marginalized community that may not have these opportunities elsewhere. So that's a little about what we do. When I joined the company, which was in the fall of 2012, we already had a pretty robust social media presence. We were on, I think, 5 or so different platforms. Today, we have a presence on 6 different platforms. I am typically a one-woman marketing department, so as has been covered earlier in the presentation, you really do have to be strategic about where you spend your time. One of the great things about social media and about entrepreneurship is the flexibility. Something that works for you at one time in your company's career may turn out to be a less valuable platform as other ones crop up or as your focus or strategy changes. And it's very easy to flow from one platform to another as your needs, market, and the available media evolves. So in the interest of time, what I'd like to do is look outside of the big 4, the big guys, get away from talking about something like Twitter or Facebook, and focus on some of the relative newcomers to the social media landscape. So I'm going to be talking about 2 companies that were launched in 2010 and are now very much major players, especially for consumer brands, folks in e-commerce. Those would be Instagram and Pinterest. So we joined Instagram very recently, just this past August. And as I was putting this presentation together, I was trying to put myself in your seats, and my immediate question would be, well, wait a minute, if you're a very lean team, why would you start yet another social media platform? Which would be a good question. And the reason that we decided to start using Instagram is that it really felt like a necessary move for us. We were seeing diminishing returns on platforms like Facebook. I don't know if you're following kind of how that's evolving for businesses, but Facebook is moving more and more towards grabbing revenue off of brands and pages, and your organic posts are going to less and less of your audience. I think an organic post reaches about 6% of your Facebook audience at this point. So unless you have a lot of money to put behind it, or unless you're a wizard at writing really viral posts that get a ton of engagement on Facebook, you may find that you're getting less out of it, which is what we were seeing. We had also just undergone a rebrand this summer. And part of that rebrand involved an investment in a portfolio of beautiful visuals that we've never had before. We really invested in making sure we had excellent photography to help with, as Elizabeth said, that visual storytelling aspect. So
images of what it looks like when hot wax is flowing out of a pitcher into a vessel. Beautiful lifestyle, kind of magazine editorial type photography, showing our candles in use in people's homes to kind of have that aspirational, oh, I can see how this piece would fit into my life, that angle. And having this robust portfolio, which was very exciting for me, it felt like a wealth of riches, it made sense to switch our focus to some platforms that really revolve around visuals and rely entirely on them. So I've really found, and I think some interesting things to think about where Instagram can add value. I found that it's a very effective tool for building relationships with bloggers and other influencers. Press is incredibly valuable as a startup, and it's a great place to foster relationships. It doesn't take a ton of effort, and it can help warm up those relationships before you reach out to a reporter or a blogger, so that they're a little aware of what you are before you make that hard pitch for coverage. It's also a really effective tool for reaching my company's secondary target market, which is socially conscious millennials. Instagram is heavily used by younger folks, so great access point there. And it's also a good place for us to work on building relationships with other brands. One thing that you want to think about is that we're all in a very crowded marketplace when you're looking at e-commerce or just kind of building your presence on the internet in general. Everyone's out there, everyone has a voice, and getting above the noise is your biggest challenge a lot of the time. So what I like to think about, and what a lot of people in this mission-oriented space is, how can I find alliances, whether they be nonprofit, other companies, that we're coming from a common place in our mission or our impact goals, but we're not necessarily competitive with each other, and just bringing that together and supplementing each other's impact outreach and tapping into each other's audiences. So, I really, to sum up, I really think that Instagram is fantastic for busy folks. It's instant, like the name says. You can either upload a photo that you've just taken that day or one that you have available. There's not a ton of content. It's short form in terms of captions. Engagement with others is very short form. It can be done a minute at a time throughout your day without taking away too much energy from anything else. And I also think it's a great tool for letting your customers come behind the scenes. So, one day we had some packaging labels show up in the office, and we were really psyched about them. So we said, let's just take a quick photo and say, hey, these labels showed up. And it's a nice thing to do because it takes away some of the gloss and the veneer of all of that high impact photography and lets people see that there are real people behind the scenes as well. Gives them insight into the day-to-day. And the second platform that I want to talk about, as I said, is Pinterest. So in a very short time, Pinterest has become a major player in social media. It is today the third most popular social media network, eclipsed only by Facebook and Twitter. And for Prosperity Candle, it makes perfect sense for us to be on Pinterest. To give you a couple of stats that you might already know or may not, 80% of users on Pinterest are women. We're a company that sells candles primarily to women. Our target market is there. Pinterest also accounts for 25% of retail referral traffic. That is a huge number. And Pinterest generates 4 times more revenue per click than Twitter, and 27% more revenue per click than Facebook. So, another way to look at that is, sure, Facebook and Twitter may be more popular overall than Pinterest, but if I have to kind of choose where I'm going to spend my time, my ROI might be better by focusing on Pinterest. And so to speak a little bit about why we find Pinterest to be an effective tool, I really think it's a great place to show and illustrate who your target customer is and let her look at your presence on Pinterest and self-identify. They know me, they're interested in what I'm interested in. So just to give a quick example of how that works for my company, we're all about ethically made goods. We're about living wages. We're about fair trade. Our target customer is concerned about making sure that her products are doing good in the world and not harm. She's likely into organic. She shops at Whole Foods. She shops at farmers markets. She likely enjoys buying things where there's a story. She knows where it came from. She knows that people weren't harmed. She knows that people were paid well for their work, and she values that. So obviously, thinking about that 80-20 rule of not just talking about yourself all the time, Pinterest is a great way for me to introduce her to other ethical brands. She's probably interested in jewelry that comes from all around the world, that's artisan made and fair trade and provides living wage income. She's probably interested in home decor items. So we can make some guesses about what's going to resonate with her, and again, let her do that self-identification and grow that relationship. And finally, I wanted to, before I finish up, talk a little bit about growing your social networks and your audience and your tribe in general. One thing that I found is that there's a lot of marketing advice out there on growing your list and growing your audience and all of that, but a lot of times I've found that it tends to be very B2B focused. A lot of talk around white papers and ebooks and positioning yourself as a thought leader, which if you're interested in going into e-commerce or launching a product, service, or a consumer brand, might not make as much sense for you. So in addition to all of the organic growth and building your content and all of that, one tool I found that can give you a little bit of a jump start is Rafflecopter, which is a giveaway widget. Now, everyone likes something free. It's really pretty simple there. But you have to be strategic with the way that you do this. It's not going to be a solid strategy to just always be giving away free product. You're devaluing your giveaways, and there's going to be definitely a law of diminishing returns that comes in. However, if you are approaching a new selling season, so for example, for us, Mother's Day is a big selling season for us. So maybe in March or April, I'll run a giveaway to bring some more people into that marketing funnel as we then get ready to enter a harder selling season where the push will be, hey, you're here, buy your mom a candle. We're also doing a giveaway right now. The reason we're doing that, A, we're approaching a major selling season again with the holidays coming up, and B, we are launching a new line of products. So great time to supplement all of the outreach that we're doing, all of the other social media network usage that we're doing, is giving away one of our new products, which is called the Forever Candle. And my goal with doing a giveaway is always to grow my mailing list. So you have so much flexibility on Rafflecopter to think about what your strategic goals are, what growth to which platforms you're trying to drive, and to set your giveaway accordingly. So my mandatory entry, you have to join our mailing list. But beyond that, people have the ability to earn additional entries by connecting with us on various social media platforms. And it can be as simple as someone clicking like and they're following you on Facebook or Pinterest, or you can do a little bit of content seeding with these giveaways. So a couple of things that we're doing along that is we have a pin this image on Pinterest option. So if someone wants, they can pin one of the images that we invested in over the summer to their boards, which helps reach all of their audiences and put a picture of Prosperity Candle's products right in their feeds. And we also have an option that that can be optionally done tweeting about the giveaway, which again, putting it in their feed, potentially reaching their followers who may click that link, join the giveaway, and hopefully tweet about it to their followers, so on and so forth. So when you get home today, prosperitycandle.com/winforever. Thanks for your time, guys. We are looking forward to chatting.
How's everybody?
Good.
It's going well. You're learning a lot, having fun. Let me see a show of hands of who has no idea what they want to be when they grow up. What I want to chat with you about in the next few minutes is the agency that I run here based in the Pioneer Valley called True to You. It's about understanding who you are and leveraging that passion, that personal brand to turn it into whether it's a business that you run, start, or operate or own, or whether you work in any other organization for another person, whether you work in a company, in a nonprofit, in a government agency. Your success in a large part, it's certainly in my experience, is about igniting that fire that you have inside you and creating that personal brand. I sometimes think of myself as a reinvention coach. right? I've had a lot of epiphanies in my life. My family members, my friends, my colleagues are always saying, I can't keep up with you. You're always starting new businesses, you're going on to other things, you're leaving different segments. But if I actually follow the trajectory of when I was in high school all the way to this moment, I feel like I've been doing the same thing my whole life. And if I were to say, well, what's my personal brand? I think of myself as kind of a pathological optimist. I'm interested in a lot of things, but the core things that I really want to spend my time doing, I've actually turned into great business opportunities. So I've been in business in communications, public relations, marketing, and branding for 25 years. I have, can you go to the next slide? Worked for some of the biggest brands in social change and cause marketing. Anyone here heard of Patagonia, Whole Foods, Aveda, Ben & Jerry's, Stonyfield Farm? Those are all brands that I've worked for either as their vice president of communications and marketing or externally where I've run my own communications agency to really deal with their communications and PR needs. The woven thread through all of that pathological optimism for me and what I care about is using the power of communications to do good in the world. Sounds terribly cliche, but I'm actually interested in a lot of things. I'm interested in how to really fight causes and raise awareness and drive people into action based on what an organization or company is doing. So I've had the opportunity inside all of these brands, I'm working on those issues. Organic agriculture, sustainable fisheries, climate, travel philanthropy, green businesses, supply chains, fair trade, social entrepreneurship. And I've actually come full circle back to social entrepreneurship because in 2008, I quit my job. I had this great gig. This is right before the bottom of the world fell out, by the way. And so many people have said, boy, remind me not to have you buy a lottery ticket for me next time. But the point is, I had really done all I could do working for a great brand by the name of Lindblad Expeditions. They were sort of the leader of ecotourism. Small ship cruises all over the world, the Arctic, the Antarctic, the Galapagos Islands, Baja California. I got to bring my film crews and really tell incredible stories working with National Geographic explorers and entrepreneurs on board our ships. It was a great gig, 33 trips around the world in less than 5 years, but I really wanted to find work in the Pioneer Valley, right here, right where we live. And there I was in Amherst with all the students from the 5 colleges, and everybody said, MJ, I want you to help me figure out what you did. You seem to have this like really cool career working with all these cool companies doing good in the world. But actually they didn't know what that piece inside of them was to turn on. And so that's where the True to You name of the communications firm comes from. Being true to yourself and using the power of that truth to really ignite your own business and figure out what you want to do. Next slide. So I'm going to give you 4 case studies of how to use social marketing in a variety of either your own business that you're starting now, I assume. Let me see a show of hands of who has a business idea or who's an entrepreneur or who wants to start something in this room. Okay, and who is looking to use their own critical skills, tools, interests to work for somebody else when they get out of here? Okay. So it's a good mix. You can do either with these 4 case studies that I'm going to show you. The good news is that social networking is like the best thing that ever came along to help you do that for very little money. And when I started out and I had my first jobs in PR and marketing, and then when I ran my own firm, these tools didn't exist. So here's 4 quick ways that you can really use social networking. The first one is one of my clients. It's called Goodweave. Goodweave is a little tiny nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. that rescues and rehabilitates child laborers in the high-end carpet industry. Not something you think about every day, right? Turns out, in 1997, there were about 1 million kids in India and Nepal working in child labor making high-end rugs, tying little knots. Also turns out that it takes about 1 million knots to tie an 8x10 rug for a child laborer of 8, 9, 10 years old. This NGO rescues, rehabilitates, sends them to school, by virtue of people buying a rug that has the Good Weave label on it. We came up with an ad campaign called 1 in a Million, playing both off of the Million Kids and the Million Knots. And that campaign we put on all social networking platforms and drove enough interest such that Macy's decided they wanted to sell those rugs. So a really easy, good way, and the nonprofit said, but MJ, we don't have a big budget, we don't really have anything except this one thing. We have these incredible shots. As Kim mentioned, when you have really good assets of photography, they happen to have photos of these child laborers from Roberto Romano, a very famous Italian photographer that we use as center to the ads. So 11 magazines picked up the ads as pro bono, and virally on all of the apps through mostly Facebook and Twitter at the time, really drove interest around buying Good Weave rugs to support fighting child labor. So for social change and impact, it's a great tool. Next slide. Another great opportunity, and again, these are tiny budget examples. There were a bunch of companies interested in leveraging their interest around climate change. And we came up with a campaign called undoit.org. And we said to all of them, we're happy to build your brand's profile into the campaign. So we came up with ads, and this is hard to see from the back of the room, but Gary Erickson at Cliff Bar, his brand is really about extreme sports. So he wanted to showcase extreme sports. Whereas Stonyfield was leveraging a lot of their focus in marketing around youth soccer and health and wellness and moms and organic. And Organic Valley was really focused on the purity of organic and babies. So all of our headlines were, there's things you can't undo. Climate change and global warming isn't one of them. We also did another ad with Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson at the Super Bowl, if you remember. There's some things you can't undo. Global warming's not one of them. We had another one with a toilet bowl, and you're in a hotel, and the toothbrush drops into the toilet bowl. There's some things you can't undo. Climate change isn't one of them. And what that did is it drove enough people to sign petitions to get the bill moved into Congress. So it was really around these companies' desire to be activists. Again, using platforms like Facebook, Twitter, to really move their campaign and to drive it eventually to a URL. Next slide. So you heard Elizabeth talk about crowdfunding, raising money, philanthropy, getting coverage in the news. These are really important things to get a new brand or initiative noticed. Another client of ours is Verite, based in Amherst. They monitor sweatshops around the world. They had the Department of Labor funding a really, really big report on the number of people in sweatshops in human trafficking and enslaved conditions around the world. 14.7 million. It's not a small number. It's a really big number. And that commissioned report and the work that Verite did in uncovering what they found in these awful, awful conditions in something like 27 countries around the world, they then said, well, what do we do with that 14.7 million? And it's, by the way, in apparel and footwear and beauty and electronics and every single thing you buy and eat. But the government really wanted to know, how can we help more people understand this? So we created a video. The story of Ed, who's a Filipina girl representing that 14.7 million. And in that 5-minute little video of Ed's story, we represented all the other folks. Again, we put it out on all the social networks. We got coverage in something like 7 national outlets, a ton of international outlets, top tier news stories, but it made its way around and ended up raising a lot of money for the NGO on the backside. Again, a really inexpensive way to draw attention, to get news coverage, and to use social networking as that platform. And finally, the last slide, this is a client of mine, not the Dalai Lama's not a client of mine, but there's a client in Hadley called the Mind and Life Institute, based right here in the Pioneer Valley. And A couple of months ago, they hired me because they had a big conference on mindfulness and neuroscience coming together. And they wanted like 1,600 people was their break-even point, held at the Marriott Copley last weekend, 4-day conference. And when I saw them in September, they said, MJ, we're only at 1,000. We really need to get up to 1,600 for our break-even spot. And they had a huge following on Facebook. They had for mindfulness and neuroscientists, it was pretty large. 70,000 followers on Facebook. It's not, it's a pretty big deal for a lot of academics. And they were not using their tools on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest at all. And so they had 16 some odd years of Dalai Lama intimate conversations in his living room, all sitting on the shelf. So my film team produced little 1-minute spots, 60-second spots about His Holiness, really talking about lessening the ills of society, like helping people in their everyday lives. So they bring meditation, mindfulness together with neuroscience. We created these 5 little spots that were really easy to understand, and in less than 7 weeks, we raised the numbers up to 1,700 and surpassed their sort of break-even spot. So marketing-wise, think what you'd have to spend in either radio, banner ads, advertising. There's no way this organization had that, but we used the tools really of social networking as a marketing platform, and it was just super, super, super successful. So these 4 examples, I wanted to end by telling you that I come full circle of running my last communications agency. I spoke at this conference 2 or 3 years ago, and I was just starting my own venture called True to You, and it's really an apparel company. It's a project by students for students about underwear and dorm wear that's made with integrity, with good working condition, and sold for students who are entrepreneurs. And it's interesting that catalyzed time that I was here, we're now getting ready to ramp up and start that company, and our samples are being made as we speak in Turkey. But the point of why my agency was really started for and by students sitting in chairs just like you is that a lot of times students who work for us say, God, I have no idea what I want to do, MJ, and I'm really interested in all these kinds of things, but I don't know what to do next. And the key thing for moving to the next step is figure out what that personal brand is of yours. Figure out what you're really interested in. And no matter what that is, you'll be able to figure it out, whether it's your own business or whether it's a company or an organization in which you work. Thanks very much.
So I think a surprising theme that came with the presentations was that you don't have to give up your dreams in order to have a successful business, the way people once thought you needed to. So let's open it up for questions right away for our panel.
Hi, Jonathan Nagasako from Western New England University. My question to, the panel is, how do you commercialize, say, research? For some people, they want to go into graduate school, possibly pursue a PhD. How do you commercialize, say, a medical research project?
So commercialize, you mean make it, take it and take your research and create a market for it? Is that what you mean?
Do you mean raise money for your research?
No, commercializing it.
So really sell it.
Sell it, yes.
And do you have a sense of what a product would be, or is it a patent? Is your idea that you have some insight and you want to be able to pitch it to companies that might be able to commercialize it?
Wait, can you rephrase the question?
Well, I think one of the questions
That's really good. That's the answer.
Right. I think one of the questions is trying to figure out if you have this insight from your research. What it sounds like you're trying to do is create a connection with someone who can commercialize it.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yes.
Because that's as scientists, as researchers, we're developing new ideas in the lab. We're tackling kind of these basic science questions, and then the key is trying to figure out who in industry is interested. We have a case of someone at Mount Holyoke who, in a classroom, and this isn't kind of hard science research, but she developed something, kind of these wearable slippers for nighttime, and they use Arduino technology. And the question was, well, this is a really cool idea. What do I do with this, right? How do we get it out of the university? How do we get it out of the lab? And what ended up happening was she started using kind of faculty members, kind of using forums like this to pitch and just showcase the idea. So I think what you're saying is, how do I get it out there? The key is, though, in all of this social media stuff and the crowdsourcing, is there is this con of how do you make sure you ensure your intellectual property rights, right? So you're putting it out there, you're trying to get seed funding, or you're trying to get investors, or trying to get someone to help you commercialize. How do you make sure that you have that copyright and that patent first, so that that doesn't get taken from you? So I would say for you, it's a combination of both kind of like networking, and then also trying to, I don't know if there's a site where it's a matchmaking. Like I haven't seen a crowdsourcing or where you're trying to match ideas with potential distributors. I just don't know of it online. But that's a kind of an interesting market opportunity if it doesn't exist. Does anyone know of that?
Well, one of the presentations mentioned, two things mentioned. One presentation mentioned you can find your tribe. So who are the people who are also interested in that kind of technology? And then the main thing that came out of a lot of it was the story. Can you tell a story about that discovery and that application? And then what are the groups that would be interested in that story? And from them you can build.
I mean, also I would say in a nutshell, with every entrepreneurial endeavor, right? Whether it's research or footwear or a candle, you have to ask those traditional business questions first. What is it? Who is the market? What is this product or service? Start with your very basic research and then insert the word research there and watch the tentacles spread out. But you really have to start with that first.
Okay, so I do marketing. I'm kind of a one-person marketing team myself for a nonprofit. We do Twitter. We just started doing Google+. My question is we keep having to cancel events because we're not getting the attendance and enrollment, and this is basically my job. I'm all over social media. I'm like always, I'm active. I have we use Hootsuite, so I have everything scheduled going out. First of all, is Google Plus worth my time, do you think? Because we just started using that. And what else can I do to amp this up? I mean, we help small businesses grow. We have funding, we have grants. We can, pay for people to come to our classes and our workshops. And I don't know what to do.
Us too. So events are very challenging. They just are. I've always found events to be challenging. You're not alone in this. To quickly speak to the Google Plus angle, it depends if your audience is there, to be honest. It's a platform that has a lot of energy around it because it's Google's social network. And I think there's a lot of thinking, Google is going to reward me for utilizing and keeping a presence on that network. What I've found is that if I present my tribe, my consumers, with areas of social media to engage me. Here's your menu of ways you can engage Prosperity Candle on social media. Google Plus is never picked. And so I'm realizing this is not where they want to be, so I'm not going to force them to be there, and I'm not going to try to get them to A, adopt a new platform, and then B, engage with me on the platform. That's a really big ask.
I'm like, no.
Right. So that would be what I would push back if you've got someone who's like, no, Google Plus is great. It's great if your people are there. If they're not, then switch your focus, find them, and then you've got a single ask, which is engage with me on this platform, not adopt this platform and engage with me. So that would be my advice on that front. And then in terms of marketing events, again, I think if you're finding that you're struggling with this, and maybe it would be helpful to hear a little bit more about what events you're running, what partners can you bring in the community, or where are there opportunities to have a class or a session or event where there's a bigger presence? So, for example, our company is located in the Eastworks building in East Hampton, and
if there's a big event going on the first floor, like a fair or something like that, tapping into that natural energy and having that co-marketing partner there is a lot easier than just doing it on your own. So
Yeah,
thinking about...
We work with the Small Business Association, so we're all in a building together.
Okay.
So like we all work together, but it's still, we're all having problems drumming people up to get into our things.
So one of the things that I would just encourage all of us to think about as we use social media or trying to think about how to engage our consumers or our audiences or whatever stakeholder is try to think about it from there. Like there's this idea of user-centered design, and think about these events from the user's perspective. And maybe you need to do some focus groups with them. Why aren't they coming? Do you need to go out, if everyone is clustered in one building, do you need to actually go out to where your people are, the people you're trying to serve? And maybe you have it in a cafeteria. Maybe you have it, somewhere. Maybe you have it, in a non-routine place, so that you're taking away that pain point of whatever it is, of what's preventing people. So the thing that you're saying, you're focusing on the push, like how do we get it out there better? But I would say step back a moment and say, what do our users want? Do they want these events? How do they want these events? What's the nature of them? Do they need to have food with it? Students, offer
Food is
pizza,
always
right?
good, yeah.
No, but I think that know your customer would be the first kind of prior question.
I was wondering if you guys could address negative feedback in social media and how you learn from it and how you go forward from that.
I'm of two minds. On the one hand, I'm not about censorship, right? This is all about free speech, and I work with companies that are about transparency. And there is a thought that when you have great content and great transparency and you're an authentic voice in the world, that it will pay itself back in spades. But there are some awful trolls out there. I mean, let's face it, people like to write crappy stuff, and they like to be bigger than they actually are. So I find I have my teams watch very carefully, and if there are small things, I like to promote dialogue and debate. So I always respond with facts. Well, in fact, that's not the case. It actually is here, and here's the cited research or the CEO or the whatever. If that continues, I just hide them or delete them. And it's kind of like the playground. You want to play like a bully, then you don't deserve to really play. And that's how I feel. I don't know how you guys feel, but it's sort of like good works in the world will pay off to you. But people who are snarky, but I don't believe that ever that if someone has an opinion that they don't like your product or service, that's room for taking them off. Ever. It really is a marketplace. If you're going to play in that space and you're going to play in transparency, you got to have both sides. And that's what's tricky about it.
Thank you all for coming.